Everyone in the company laughed when a janitor walked in wearing a diamond watch. But when the CEO called him to the stage, what happened next left every employee frozen in silence and changed the company forever. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, tell me, from which country are you watching this video? I love seeing where our amazing viewers are tuning in from. And if you love stories that touch your heart and teach a lesson, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us share more inspiring stories with you. It was a Monday morning at Harris & Co., one of the biggest tech companies in the city. The elevators dinged, the smell of coffee filled the air, and the sound of clicking heels echoed across the marble floors. Everyone was rushing. Managers with their laptops, interns holding files, employees lost in meetings and deadlines. Among them walked Samuel, the janitor. He was easy to miss, dressed in his simple gray uniform with a small badge that said maintenance staff. Every morning, he arrived before anyone else and left after everyone was gone. He cleaned the hallways, polished the glass doors, and smiled politely at people who rarely smiled back. But this morning, something was different. As Samuel bent down to pick up a piece of paper near the elevator, a glimmer of light flashed from his wrist. It caught everyone's attention. The sunlight hit it perfectly. A diamond watch, sparkling like something out of a luxury catalog. At first, no one said anything. They just stared. Then came the whispers. Wait, is that a diamond watch? On him? Must be fake. Maybe he stole it. The rumors spread like wildfire. By lunch break, everyone in the office had heard about it. The janitor wearing a diamond watch. Some laughed, some mocked, some recorded short videos secretly. A few even zoomed in from their desks to see if it was real. But Samuel didn't seem to notice. He quietly continued his work, wiping desks, cleaning windows, carrying his mop and bucket like every other day. Except today, people were watching him. Inside, Richard Harris, the CEO, sat with his executives during a board meeting. He was in his early 40s, confident, sharp, and respected. Nothing escaped his notice. His assistant leaned in and whispered, "Sir, there's something strange going on downstairs." Richard raised an eyebrow. Strange? What do you mean? The janitor, Samuel, he's wearing an expensive diamond watch. People are talking about it all over the building. The CEO leaned back in his chair, half amused. A janitor with a diamond watch? That's unusual. The room chuckled. But Richard didn't. He had always believed that appearances could be deceiving. Still, curiosity got the better of him. "Bring him to my office after lunch," he said. "Let's see what this is about." While everyone gossiped, Samuel sat quietly on a small stool, eating his simple lunch, bread, soup, and tea. He looked at the watch on his wrist, turning it slowly, as if it meant more to him than anyone could imagine. The diamonds sparkled softly in the dim light. He smiled faintly. To him, it wasn't just a watch. It was a memory, a story only. He knew at 2 p.m. the CEO's secretary appeared. "Mr. Harris would like to see you." Everyone stopped working, heads turned. The janitor was being called to the CEO's office. Samuel nodded politely, wiped his hands on a towel, and began walking, slow, calm steps echoing in the hall. The whispers grew louder behind him. He's in trouble. They'll fire him for sure. Imagine stealing a diamond watch. But Samuel didn't flinch. He gently knocked on the glass door. "Come in," a deep voice said. He stepped inside. The room was bright, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The CEO sat at his desk, eyes focused on Samuel's wrist. For a few seconds, silence filled the air. Only the ticking of a clock could be heard, almost mocking the moment. "That's quite a watch you're wearing," the CEO finally said. "Mind telling me where you got it?" Samuel looked at the watch, then at the CEO. His voice was soft but steady. It was a gift, sir. A gift? Richard leaned forward. From who? Samuel's lips curled into a gentle smile. From someone who once believed I was worth more than my job title. Richard blinked, surprised by the answer. There was no fear, no arrogance in Samuel's tone, only quiet dignity. The CEO studied him for a long moment. Finally, he said, "All right, Samuel, you can go. Thank you." Samuel nodded, turned, and walked out silently, his steps calm, his posture straight. The moment Samuel left, employees rushed to the CEO's door. "Sir, what did he say? Is it real? Did he admit stealing it?" Richard didn't answer. He just stared out the window, thoughtful, distant. Something about Samuel's words stuck with him. He had heard thousands of excuses in his life, but never one spoken with such quiet truth. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph, his late father smiling, holding a watch that looked strangely familiar. Richard froze. His heart skipped. Could it be? He looked again. Same design, same shape, same sparkle. His mind raced back to a memory he had buried long ago. The CEO thought it was just a mystery about a janitor's watch, but what he was about to discover would shake his heart and change his company forever. The sun was setting over the glass tower of Harris & Coors, painting golden stripes across the office floor. Most employees were pretending to work, but their eyes were fixed on the CEO's office. The blinds were half closed, but everyone could still see Samuel standing quietly inside, facing the powerful Richard Harris. Inside the office, the air was thick, like the silence before a storm. Richard leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen on the table. His sharp blue eyes studied every line on Samuel's face. "You've been with this company for, 5 years?" Richard finally said. Samuel nodded politely. "Yes, sir. 5 years next month. Never missed a day, never caused any trouble. Everyone says you're hard-working." "I try my best, sir." "Then help me understand something." Richard leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "That watch on your wrist, that's a Rolex Diamond Edition. Costs more than most of my junior managers make in a year." Samuel said nothing. His eyes dropped for a moment to the shining silver watch, then back up to Richard. "It was a gift, sir," he repeated calmly. Richard's tone sharpened, though he kept his voice measured. "A gift from whom? You understand how this looks, don't you?" A janitor walks into the office wearing a luxury timepiece. People talk. Samuel nodded. "I understand, sir." "Then tell me," Richard pressed, his voice lowering. "Where did you really get it?" The room went still. The ticking clock on the wall echoed like a heartbeat. Samuel's voice came quietly, almost like a whisper carried by dignity. "From someone who believed I was worth more than what I appear to be." Richard frowned, confused and slightly irritated by the cryptic answer. "And who would that be?" Samuel smiled faintly. "Someone from long ago, sir. Someone your name reminds me of." Richard blinked. "My name?" Samuel nodded gently but said nothing more. Richard sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You know, Samuel, people don't just walk around wearing gifts like that. If it was stolen, if it belongs to someone else—" Samuel lifted his gaze sharply, not angry, just steady. "With all respect, Mr. Harris, I may not own much, but I've never stolen anything in my life. Not money, not time, not even a single tool from this company." His words were calm but cut through the tension like a knife. Richard froze, surprised by the firmness in his tone. For a moment, both men just looked at each other, two different worlds in one silent room. One dressed in a $1,000 suit, the other in a worn-out janitor's uniform. But somehow, in that moment, they stood on equal ground. Richard exhaled, trying to mask his unease. "All right, Samuel, you can go." Samuel bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, sir." He turned and walked out of the office, quietly closing the glass door behind him. "So, what happened? Did he confess? Is he fired?" Samuel didn't reply. He just smiled faintly and kept walking, carrying his mop and bucket like always. Richard sat alone, staring at his reflection in the glass wall. Samuel's words kept echoing in his head. Someone who thought I was worth more than my job title. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had heard that voice, that calm kindness, somewhere before. He opened the drawer again and took out the old photograph of his father. There it was. His father smiling, wearing the exact same model of watch. A wave of memories rushed through him. Years ago, his father's watch had stopped working. He had taken it to a small repair shop in a quiet neighborhood. The man there, a humble repairman, refused payment and said, "Sometimes helping someone is worth more than money." Richard's heart pounded. Could that repairman have been Samuel? The next day, Richard walked into the office early. Samuel was already there, mopping the floors, humming softly to himself. Richard stopped, watching him for a long time. He finally said, "Samuel, can you meet me in the conference hall this evening? There's something I need to discuss." In front of everyone. Samuel hesitated for a moment, then nodded respectfully. "Of course, sir." The CEO thought he had seen it all. Power, success, and status. But what he was about to learn from a janitor would humble him and reveal a truth he had forgotten long ago. That night, long after everyone had left, the building of Harris & Coworth stood silent. The only light came from the CEO's office, where Richard Harris sat alone, staring at the photograph of his father. He held it tightly, his mind spinning with questions. The watch on his father's wrist in that picture, it wasn't just similar. It was identical to the one Samuel was wearing. The same model, the same diamond edges, the same tiny scratch near the dial. Richard whispered to himself, "It can't be. It just can't." He closed his eyes, and the story began to unfold in his memory. A young Richard Harris, barely in his 20s, stood outside a small rundown watch repair shop on the corner of Willow Street. The sign read, "Samuel's Time and Repair. Honest work, fair price." Inside, a humble man worked behind a wooden counter, surrounded by tools and ticking clocks. He looked up and smiled. It was Samuel, much younger, his hands steady and eyes kind. "How can I help you, son?" he asked warmly. Richard placed a broken watch on the counter. "It was my father's. He said it stopped after he dropped it last week. No one in town could fix it." Samuel picked it up gently, inspecting every tiny piece like it was something sacred. "Old but special," he said softly. "It can be fixed." "How much will it cost?" Richard asked, reaching for his wallet. Samuel shook his head. "Your father's name is Harris, right? The one who runs the community library?" Richard nodded, surprised. "Yes. Do you know him?" Samuel smiled. "I do. Years ago, when I couldn't afford books for my daughter, your father gave me a whole set for free, said knowledge should never be behind a price tag." Richard's eyes widened. Samuel continued, "Let me fix this for him. No charge. Consider it my way of returning kindness." Hours passed. Samuel worked carefully, cleaning, polishing, adjusting. Finally, he wound the watch, and it began ticking again. He handed it back to Richard with a smile. "There you go. Just like new." I don't know how to thank you," Richard said. "You don't need to," Samuel replied softly. "Just promise me something. When you grow successful, don't forget to be kind. One act of kindness can outlive any fortune." Richard smiled back then, But as years passed, he did forget. The young man who once admired kindness had turned into a CEO obsessed with numbers, profits, and image. Richard opened his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. He whispered, "Samuel, it was you. All these years." He looked again at the photo. His father, Samuel's repaired watch shining on his wrist. Then another memory hit him. His father's funeral. After the ceremony, a small box had been delivered to Richard. Inside was that same watch, restored and shining. A note had come with it, written in Samuel's handwriting. "He once gave me knowledge. This is my way of giving back time." Richard never knew who sent it. Until now. He leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. The janitor he had doubted, the man people mocked, was the same man who had once helped his father and inspired him decades ago. And that diamond watch, it wasn't a symbol of wealth. It was a symbol of gratitude, of time, of a kindness that had quietly traveled across generations. Richard wiped his eyes, whispering, "Tomorrow, everyone will know who Samuel really is." The truth about the diamond watch wasn't about money or status. It was about a promise, one man's forgotten act of kindness returning to him in the most unexpected way. The next morning, the entire Harris-encumbered building buzzed with whispers. Everyone had received an email from the CEO's office. "All employees must attend the morning assembly in the main conference hall at 9 a.m. Attendance mandatory." No one knew what was happening. Some assumed it was about a new project. Others joked, maybe it's about the janitor's watch again. But no one could have imagined what was coming. At exactly 9, the tall glass doors opened. Richard Harris, the CEO, walked in wearing a dark suit and a solemn expression. Behind him walked Samuel, the janitor, quietly, humbly, with his mop set aside for once. The room fell silent. Every whisper stopped. Everyone's eyes fixed on the two men. Richard stepped up to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and began to speak. "Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to tell you a story. A story that started long before this company even existed." His voice was calm but carried weight. The audience leaned in. "Years ago," he continued, "when I was young, my father owned a watch. It was old, precious, and broken. We went from shop to shop, but no one could fix it. Until one man did. A man who refused to take money for it. When I asked him why, he said, 'Some things are worth more than money. Kindness always finds its way back.'" The room was dead silent. Even the air felt heavy with emotion. Richard paused, looking toward Samuel, who stood quietly near the stage, head bowed. "That man," Richard said slowly, "was none other than our janitor, Samuel." Gasps rippled across the hall. People exchanged stunned looks. The same janitor they mocked, the same man they overlooked every day, had been part of the CEO's life story all along. Richard continued, his voice trembling slightly. "Samuel didn't just fix a watch. He fixed my understanding of what it means to be human. When my father passed away, I received that same watch as a gift from him, fully restored. And I never knew who had done it. Until yesterday." He turned toward Samuel and said gently, "Sir, would you please join me on stage?" Samuel hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked forward. The audience began to clap softly, then louder and louder until the hall echoed with applause. Richard reached into his pocket and took out a small velvet box. Inside was a gold badge engraved with the company's crest. "Samuel," Richard said, "you've taught this company something I never could, that respect is not earned by titles, but by actions. From this day forward, you are no longer just a janitor. You are now the head of employee welfare at Harris & Co." Tears welled in Samuel's eyes. He looked at the crowd, People who had once ignored him, now standing, clapping, cheering. He wiped a tear, smiled, and said, softly into the microphone, "I never wanted recognition. I just wanted to do my work with honesty. But today I've learned that even in a big world, kindness is never forgotten." The room erupted in applause. Even the employees who once mocked him stood with teary eyes. That day, Harris & Co. didn't just change its policies, it changed its heart. A janitor's quiet kindness became the company's loudest lesson. The room remained in pin-drop silence. The ticking of the clock echoed through the glass walls of the grand conference hall as Marcus held the diamond watch up for everyone to see. The bright light from the ceiling shimmered across its surface, scattering tiny rainbows across the faces of stunned employees. "This," Marcus said softly, his voice trembling, "isn't just a watch. It's a story of sacrifice, of pain, and of choices that most of us will never have the courage to make." He turned toward the CEO, Mr. Donovan, whose confident smile had now faded into a troubled frown. Marcus continued, "I bought this watch 5 years ago, not because I wanted to show off, but because I wanted to remember something. You see, it belonged to my son." Gasps filled the air. Even the camera crew filming the event for the company's anniversary broadcast stopped moving. Marcus's eyes glistened as he spoke, his voice raw with emotion. "My son Tyler used to dream of becoming a pilot. He worked hard, studied late, and always told me, 'Dad, one day I'll buy you a watch so you never have to worry about time again.'" He paused, looking down at the shining watch in his palm. But one rainy night, Tyler was driving home from work when a speeding car hit him. He didn't make it. The audience's collective breath caught. This watch was the last thing he saved up for before he died. When I found it in his drawer, I decided to buy the same one with my entire year's savings, not to show wealth, but to keep a piece of him close. Tears streamed down his cheeks. No one dared to move. I cleaned these floors not because I failed in life, Marcus continued, his voice steady now. I clean them because they lead to people's dreams. And maybe one day, someone walking these same halls will look beyond the surface and see the real worth of a man. At that moment, Mr. Donovan stood, visibly shaken. His eyes were wet, and his usual commanding tone had softened. "Marcus," he said, walking toward the janitor, "I owe you an apology." He turned to the employees, who sat still, humbled and ashamed. "This man," Donovan said, "has just taught us a lesson that no leadership book ever could. Success isn't measured by what's on your wrist, but by what's in your heart." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. Some wiped tears. Others couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. The CEO placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "From this day forward, Marcus isn't just our janitor. He's part of our leadership team. I want him to share his story with every new employee who joins this company, so we never forget what true value looks like." The crowd erupted into applause, genuine, emotional, and full of newfound respect. Marcus stood in disbelief, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of fate. As the applause faded, Marcus whispered, "Thank you, but I don't need a title. All I ever wanted was for people to see that kindness costs nothing." Mr. Donovan smiled. "Then let's make that our company's new motto." That moment changed everything. The story of the janitor with the diamond watch went viral across social media. Within days, people from around the world shared it as a reminder that dignity, love, and humility shine brighter than any jewel. Months later, the company introduced a new annual award, the Marcus Grant Humanity Award, given to employees who showed exceptional compassion and character. Marcus continued working there, not as a janitor defined by his uniform, but as a mentor whose story inspired thousands. And every time he looked at the diamond watch on his wrist, he smiled. Not because it sparkled, but because it reflected the legacy of his son and the heart he carried within him. And that, my friends, is the story of the janitor whose diamond watch changed an entire company's heart. If this story touched your soul, drop A in the comments and tell us what lesson you learned from Marcus's story. Also, let us know below, from which country are you watching this video? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring life stories that open hearts and change minds.